Nepal and Japan's brokers, fraudulent administrative scriveners, and the Japanese government have colluded to exploit Nepal's innocent chefs. Hi, this is Nataro. This is the second part of The Dark Side of Indo-Nepal Restaurants in Japan. While the previous content exposed the shadowy aspects of the proliferation of Indian-Nepalese restaurants in Japan, this time I delve even deeper. In this scenario, we have the victims, Nepalese chefs, and the culprits. Local brokers in Nepal, Tandoor oven brokers in Japan, Japanese restaurant corporation owners, administrative scriveners, and the Japanese government. Except for the chefs, everyone else is part of the problem. They exploit the chefs, tearing apart their lives for their own selfish gains. Let me explain this intricate structure from an insider's perspective in a concise manner. By the way, the chef who was able to become a broker in the previous revelation will not be applicable this time. To recap, the surge in Indian-Nepalese restaurants in Japan is due to the efforts of brokers. For Nepalese individuals aspiring to earn money by moving to Japan, the challenge lies in obtaining a work visa. While this is incredibly difficult, securing one as a chef is relatively practical. Brokers step in to help by preparing the necessary documents, arranging the journey to Japan, and securing employment in curry restaurants, in exchange for a fee of $10,000 to $20,000 USD. Although this is a significant sum in Nepal, people still manage to gather the funds, driven by their determination to come to Japan. However, the ones profiting reliably from this system are the brokers alone. Even if they reduce the unit price slightly, arranging jobs for 10 or 20 individuals results in substantial earnings. Now, in the process of preparing Indian cuisine, especially dishes like naan bread and tandoori chicken, a crucial element is the tandoor oven. This is where another broker, the Tandoor broker, comes into play. Limited to restaurants operating as legal entities, introducing a tandoor oven allows 4 Nepalese chefs to be granted work visas per unit, sanctioned by the Legal Affairs Bureau in Japan. Hence, specialized brokers exist to supply tandoor ovens to these establishments. Once visas are granted in Japan, local brokers facilitate job placements for the chefs. A portion of their fees is then distributed to the Japanese tandoor brokers and the corporations that introduced the tandoor ovens. However, within these arrangements, many Japanese restaurant owners are unscrupulous. They receive their fees and then resell the tandoor ovens through brokers, subsequently firing the chefs. Furthermore, administrative scriveners get involved, aiding applicants who don't meet the visa conditions by fabricating documents, all for a price. Remarkably, the Nepalese individuals are aware of these circumstances from the beginning, yet they still engage in these practices. But what drives them to do so? To understand this, let's briefly discuss Nepal's political situation. After Nepal democratized in 1990, political instability persisted. Armed factions, advocating for the overthrow of the monarchy, initiated an armed conflict against the government in 1996. This conflict endured for 11 years, until a ceasefire was established in 2006. As the internal conflict escalated from 2000 onwards, people sought jobs abroad due to the deteriorating security situation. Under the ceasefire agreement, the government granted 600,000 Nepalese rupees, approximately $5,000 USD, to the citizens who laid down their arms. Many went to work in the Middle East, but those who could afford a little more aimed for Japan, where working conditions were better. Under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Justice, there exists a residency category called skill for foreigners possessing specialized skills such as cooking unique to their native countries. Cooks fall under this category and are invited by owners of Japanese Indian-Nepalese restaurants. They acquire this residency status and work in Japan. While there are costs like stamp duties involved in submitting the application documents to the Ministry of Justice, the residency status itself is not inherently expensive. However, when demand and supply become imbalanced, it presents a business opportunity for brokers. These brokers not only charge exorbitant fees, but also subject the chefs to long working hours and low wages. So why do the chefs accept these conditions? Because if they can secure a skill visa, their spouses and children can reside in Japan on family visas. However, if they don't earn enough to support their dependents, they can't bring their families to Japan. To remedy this, they falsify their incomes on paper to meet the requirements. The meager salary naturally makes their lives difficult. But that's not all. Taxes and insurance are calculated based on the declared income, imposing a significant financial burden on them. Accepting these conditions becomes necessary because their spouses, who arrived in Japan on family visas, are allowed to work for 28 hours a week. The chefs' wives work in places like hotel housekeeping and prepared food factories, where labor is scarce and jobs can be sustained even without proficiency in Japanese, supporting their households. According to research by Gewali, at least 30 Nepalese individuals took their own lives between 2011 and 2020. Half of them were those who had come to Japan as cooks. In 2007, there were about 10,000 Nepalese residents in Japan. By 2021, this number had grown to 97,000, almost tenfold in 15 years. Why do they pay high broker fees to come to Japan? Gawali lists 2 reasons.
Firstly, there are no jobs in Nepal, and currently there is no route to go without paying money. There might be specific programs, but even if they pass the exams, they cannot bring their families along, and the salaries are not high. To stop the exploitation by brokers, it is necessary for the governments of Japan and Nepal to establish formal routes for employment and monitor whether wages and working hours are being adhered to.
The trading of skill visas at high prices is an informal system that emerged within the imbalance of demand and supply. Brokers who exploit their compatriots for personal gain, Japanese brokers and corporation owners who view chefs as commodities, and administrative scriveners who support these wrongdoings. All these elements continue to perpetuate this situation. While both governments are aware of this, they have not taken action to address the flaws in the system. The burden of this inaction falls heavily on the chefs. Chefs working tirelessly in the kitchen have little opportunity to hear or speak Japanese, unlike the staff in the dining area. Their lack of improvement in Japanese language skills, even after coming to Japan, leaves them in a vulnerable position. If they are dismissed from their jobs, they have nowhere to go. As Giwali points out, many chefs, despite coming all the way to Japan, don't have the luxury to experience the goodness of Japan. Most chefs and international students stay in Japan without any interaction with Japanese people or society, without touching Japanese culture, and return to their home countries. Even at present, in cramped and poorly ventilated kitchens, chefs are subjected to long working hours. Unless Japan, as a nation, takes the initiative to establish systems that protect immigrant workers, the problem is likely to persist indefinitely. The Japanese government, well aware of these circumstances, seems reluctant to initiate changes, likely due to the typical Japanese mindset plagued by vested interests. Despite the aging society, Japan desires young labor from overseas, but doesn't seem inclined to improve the conditions for these individuals. Moreover, even though most brokers are aware of their ties to antisocial elements, they continue to turn a blind eye until these issues become public. The Nepalese chefs, just like the brokers, face a bleak future in this Japan. It's something like this. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. Until next time.